Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to break down all of the Legion reveals from Adepticon and AMG's studio panel. We talked about this briefly in our live stream on Sunday, but for everybody who didn't catch that or everybody who wanted a second glance, we're going to take a look at all of the news with, I'm sure, more of this being just around the corner. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Enter to win that $25 Amazon gift card. We're announcing the winner this week. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. And I have heard some of your feedback on some of the cards. We'll try to blow them up and make them a little easier for you to read. So for those of you following along at home, if you're just listening, I'll read off the text when applicable. If you're watching along, you'll be able to follow along with us. Starting off with our range troopers, which are confirmed to be support. This is going to be a support unit for 60 points. That is going to have 4 miniatures. Definitely a big take on the faction identity that they're talking about with the future direction for Star Wars Legion. We're going to talk more about this when we get into the Republic and some of the Jedi that they're putting out for Republic, but they are trying to add more faction identity to the range troopers. Let's get a closer look at these cards. So here we go. The Range Trooper card is going to be a 60-point base card for a support unit of 4 with 1 health and 2 courage. They are going to have a base E20 or E10R blaster rifle with range 1 to 4. So they're going to be a long range support, which is appropriate considering they are range troopers after all. But surprisingly, they have a pretty nice melee with their 2 white dice for their boot kick. 2 white dice per miniature is pretty good. Now they do have a personnel and a heavy weapon option, as well as grenades and comms. Now they have armor 1, which is really nice for troopers. This is again their first support that's a trooper. They have Indomitable, which is going to be pretty nice if people try to, try to kind of shoot them a lot. With their red defense dice and armor 1, they will be a little bit resilient against some damage, especially if you can set them up with heavy cover and just rely on their long range to take things out. Now they are only speed 1, but they have scale and spur to help them out a little bit with trying to get across terrain. They also have the advanced targeting trooper 1. So when they're attacking a trooper, they're going to get an aim token. They will not be able to split fire though. But it's nice that they're going to have an aim token to kind of help make up for the lack of surge of any kind. They have no offensive surge, no defensive surge. Now we did get 3 of the upgrade cards teased with them. We have the basic range trooper personnel upgrade, which is only going to be 15 points, which is appropriate. If there's 4 of them for 60, that equates to 15 points per. So you can just increase the base unit size that way. And that's actually a pretty good 15-point miniature that is going to take advantage of that range 4 E10R blaster rifle. But if you want to add a heavy option, you're going to have 2 options that we see here right now with the T21A range trooper. Also range 1 to 4. This one will boast 2 black and 2 white for 28 points with the suppressive keyword added to that attack pool. It's going to give them a pretty strong attack, although not a whole lot of anti-vehicle shenanigans until we get into the DLT-20A range trooper. This one is a pretty nice one. It's going to have impact 2. It's going to be 25 points. However, because if you use advanced targeting and aren't able to declare additional defenders, you may want to just throw everything in on a vehicle, depending on how that's going to work. I kind of see these guys as not being, especially with advanced targeting trooper, I see them as being more of a trooper threat. I don't see myself taking the DLT-20 too often. At first glance, I see myself kind of looking more at the T-21A range trooper, focusing on the anti-trooper threat, suppressive. They can do a lot of damage against leaders, trying to put extra suppression down on maybe a high value target who's a leader or an operative that you want to slow them down and deny them an entire action per turn, even at range 4, which is going to be pretty cool. So they do look pretty interesting, and the fact that they're a support is going to definitely change things up a little bit. I think it's going to be very interesting, but it could make it more difficult to get them orders, since a lot of units out there that give orders to troops will sometimes say core. There's not as many things that automatically give support, although there's a lot of things that give troopers orders. So you may run into some difficulty when trying to get them orders depending on the commanders that you typically go with. We also saw Clone Commandos also joining the party as a dedicated support with no additional miniature options coming for them. Let's go ahead and blow this card up a little bit more. The Clone Commandos here are going to be 75 points, so a little more expensive for that 4-squad support. They also have the red defense die and 1 health and 2 courage, which is going to be nice. They have also range only 1 to 2, but it is 2 dice, so they're a nicer close range version. So if the range troopers are long range support, the Clone Commandos are a close range support, but they are able to have the infiltrate keyword, so that's not going to be too much of a problem for the Clone Commandos. I think they're definitely the better unit, but of course you're going to pay a little bit more with that 75 points. Now, in the lack of any type of special personnel or heavy weapon upgrades, they do have a lot of other upgrades. They can take training, equipment, grenades, comms, and weapons. We didn't see too many of those, but we do see an equipment keyword that is mandatory. It's the Equip Katarn Pattern Armor. And we're going to see that here. It's a zero-cost upgrade, so we don't have to pay anything extra for it. But it is baked into being a one-time per game ability. You can expend this one, and it will then go away. But what the really nice thing about this is when you'd be assigned more than 1 wound from a non-melee attack. So basically, if you get shot for a big shot, you can then exhaust or expend once per game. Then flip it over. It's done. Your Katarn Pattern Armor, and you'll only take 1 wound. So if somebody shoots you with a really big shot, the Clone Commandos can kind of shrug it off and say, all right, we only lost 1 guy. Now they are 4 units, for 4 miniatures, I should say, and only 1 health per. So if you even that 1 will take a whole Clone Commando out, but if you've got medics nearby, you can potentially rectify that. They all have Infiltrate, Shielded 1, Recharge 1, and Target 1. And they have Complete the Mission, which is going to really kind of work well with Infiltrate. They're going to basically be able to place a priority mission token on the battlefield during setup, and it's going to be outside of the deployment zone. And while anybody is at range 1 of a priority mission token, they will, when this unit is at range 1, they're going to gain Search for Defense, which is going to really help them out if they can be in the right spot. And then when they attack an enemy that's at range 1 of the priority mission token, they're going to gain Critical 2. So that's a pretty good, they're going to be a pretty good unit if they're in the right spot. If they're out of position, they're going to struggle a little bit, but they still have the red defense die to help keep them alive. Potentially other cool weapons, which we'll have to wait and see. We should be getting Clone Commando previews in the relatively distant, or not too distant future. They should be within the next couple of weeks. So maybe even later today. The Bad Batch also got some more detailed previews. We'll kind of show them a little bit more clearly here. We've got the Bad Batch unit card is going to be 160 points. It looks like the extra upgrades are going to be free, so you shouldn't have to spend much more than 160 points, at least when you're running them in the Republic. They are going to have only 5 upgrades, and those are all going to be heavies. Of course, you'll be taking all of your Bad Batch members. For the Republic, Omega's there, but she's only there for the Rebellion. You can take the Bad Batch into the Rebels as mercenaries, and even though this card doesn't show it, I'm assuming there's a mercenary card for the Bad Batch that's probably virtually the same. Although I don't know if it will need to have We're Not Regs on there, and you know, I'm curious if it'll look slightly different in that case. They're going to have 2 health each and 3 courage, red defense die, a range 2, a black and a white for their ranged attack, and advanced combat training for their melee attack. They have impervious, scale, steady, which is an important one, and sharpshooter 1. which is really nice. So they'll be able to move and shoot, which is going to be very important for them. At 160 points, they had better be good, and steady is something I definitely want to see. I want to see free action economy on something that's that expensive. But they do have the We're Not Regs, which does mean that they're not going to be able to share the, do the regular clone shenanigans. And you also can't fire support with this unit, so you're not going to be able to have somebody else lean into them. That does make me think we're going to see more critical options. We see a little bit of it with Crosshair, but not a whole lot. So I do think we'll see some potential surge to hit or critical stuff with them on some of the other units, perhaps, or maybe conditional critical or conditional surge. Hunter is going to be our leader. He's going to cost 0. We also see Crosshair also costing 0. Hunter has a free action that can do that can basically inflict a wound on somebody at range 1, as long as they're not a commander or operative, which is pretty nice. It's not a guaranteed chance, but it's a pretty high chance. And then Crosshair has got a built-in weapon of range 1 to 5 with the red die attack. If he's the only die in the attack pool, you're going to gain critical 1. He has a couple of other things that aren't, that, because of the placement. When I first read it, I thought he had to be the only die in the attack pool to also gain high velocity, pierce, and precise. But that's not the case. He's only one he needs to be by himself for is for critical 1. Precise wouldn't make much sense if you only have 1 die in the attack pool in the first place. So, I think Crosshair will probably be a better option just to attack with the rest of the Bad Batch. This way, the entire attack pool will have high velocity, which is going to be awfully cool. And then pierce and precise 1. So you're going to want to make sure you're getting some aims in there. So maybe there'll be some other tech that gives them free aims. Now, if you're running the Bad Batch with the Rebellion as mercs, you can add Omega as a counterpart. She will increase the cost by 10 points. That's about the only thing that we see right now that's going to change the point cost for the unit. So you could go up 10 more points. She's going to have a 1 health. Now, normal counterpart rules state that she would have to be eliminated first, although she has a special rule that bypasses that. Plus, her ranged 1 to 2 weapon, she has to use her own weapon, and the Bad Batch has to use their own weapon. You cannot share weapons. Each miniature has to use their own weapon when you're talking about counterparts. But her I'm part of the Squad 2 ability also allows her to be touching an objective and claim it or sabotage repair. So she can kind of do basically objective shenanigans without Hunter having to be in base contact, which is kind of a cool thing, and it's thematic. Again, with the counterpart stuff that they've been doing with like Grogu and now Omega, I don't think they're mandatory to take, but I don't think everything necessarily has to be competitive or high-level competitive for it to be good. This could be competitive, but I don't think it's going to be crucial. I think it's something that you'll take just because you want to, not because you have to. And I think that that's just fine. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of the Bad Batch in a preview coming out hopefully fairly soon. These guys are coming out in July. We are also seeing the Rebel Sleeper Cell unit. We didn't get a whole lot of information about these, but they did change the name. They're no longer going to be Rebel Saboteurs, because that would have been incredibly confusing since we already have Rebel Saboteurs in the game. When they first spoiled these guys, they said they were going to be called Rebel Saboteurs. That one did not make a whole lot of sense. You wouldn't want a brand new unit and calling them Stormtroopers when we already have Stormtroopers or things like that. So I'm glad to see they changed the name. Sleeper Cell representing the troops in Andor. And then our Riot Control Squad, which is going to be very, very cool for the Empire. We've got Stormtroopers with Riot Shields. We've got K2 series droids. The K2s, you'll be able to add 2 of them with an upgrade. They're going to be a big melee-heavy option for the Empire. And this also has a lot of people thinking, hey, maybe they'll take more steps towards video game characters, since some of these characters were featured heavily in games like Jedi Fallen Order, although there are slightly different versions of them also, like Purge Troopers and stuff like that. So it does kind of escalate hopes for even more cool and exciting Imperial things like Purge Troopers and maybe more Inquisitors, maybe Cal Kestis. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that people are thinking could really show up. Plus, this represents a way for Stormtroopers to have a nice, strong melee functionality, and not only, you don't just have to run Inquisitors and Darth Vader to have strong melee units. I guess Imperial Royal Guard are also there too. So there's some options. We did get another look at the crab droids. They will be coming 2 in a pack, and we didn't get a whole lot more about them other than just like jokes about like they're very good crabs and all of that stuff. So that was exciting for a lot of folks. They're doing another terrain pack that's supposed to be, they talked about it kind of taking the place of barricades or being a substitute for barricades. Whether or not that was like an operationally taking the place of barricades, like you could put these pieces of terrain down in place of barricades for mission objectives, or for the force ability of a force lift. It's unclear, but they also implied that this Outer Rim terrain box is going to have more stuff than we just see here. So there'll be a little bit more than meets the eye. Aqua Droids were a really nice welcome surprise for Separatist fans out there. You're going to be seeing some of these awesome guys that did attack in the Clone Wars Season 3. They attacked Commando. They were part of General Grievous's assault, where he deliberately let his ships kind of, get blasted and fall into the oceans of Commando. Then they reassembled under the water, and then the Tridents were attacking, and all of that cool stuff. I have seen some people put together really, really cool Kaminoan boards where like you've got those round areas and you got the bridges between them and you got the ocean underneath. And while that's really cool, it's kind of hard to play Legion on a board where like 60% of the board is inaccessible. So not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but it's still a fun thing to do if you can. I do expect these guys to have infiltrate. They aren't going to be on notched bases, though. If you look closely, you'll see that there's notched bases on these. That means they're going to be very, very large. They talked about at length about how significantly huge these are. They didn't tell us the base size, though, so I don't know if this is like a Droidica-sized base or if this is like an AAT-sized base. It looks, based on the distance here, though, it looks like this is one of the smaller notched bases, so I expect them to be about as wide as a Droidica, but a little bit taller than a Droidica, so I do expect them to be pretty big. And definitely much larger than a clone. So, but yeah, it's the way that they kind of deployed in the episode where they were featured in episode 3, where they kind of just launched up out of the water and kind of surprised in the middle of Camino. I expect them to have infiltrate. I'd be disappointed if they didn't. Or at least a similar mechanic to infiltrate. I expect it to be infiltrate, though. It's super clean. It works, right? Now we have ARF Troopers also, which were teased, and this one looks exciting. They look to be special forces. They weren't initially proclaimed to be special forces, but Will Schick was talking about them later on, and he had thrown the term around special forces. So it seems like they're going to be an SF unit. With those kind of long-range sniper rifles, they do look like they'll be functioning in a special forces type of role. But I don't want people to get confused because it's very easy to confuse the ARF Troopers with ALF Troopers. They are not the same thing. So if you've seen the ALF Troopers, they're not real. This is not April Fool's Day. Not yet, but stay tuned because I'm going to have something for you for April Fool's. So don't worry about that. I haven't forgotten. Today's not that day, though. So when you're watching my videos over the next couple of weeks, make sure you check the date, make sure, because the ALF Trooper unit is not real and it can't hurt you. Now, back to the ARF Trooper unit. Back to the ARF Trooper unit. They're going to have a Jedi attachment, which is going to bring about generic Jedi finally into the game. And this was where they were talking about faction identity. This is something that obviously only the Republic can, well, only the Republic can do in a very easy-to-sell kind of way because they had by far the most Jedi. It'd be tougher to do generic Jedi for the Rebellion since there were so few. They all kind of stand out. It'd be also much tougher to do, generic Sith for the Separatists because, again, there's so few that they really stand out. And so you have a harder time doing that. They could, in theory, do generic Inquisitors, but we don't exactly know how many there were. And right now, all the Inquisitors we know of kind of have names. There's not really. There's some that don't get don't get a whole lot of dialogue, but this is something that is one of the ways that they're going to approach faction identity. It seems by having generic Jedi that can attach to the ARF Troopers and possibly do more. I'd love to see if these guys have a way to kind of run on their own, or if they're only going to be restricted to the ARF Troopers. It looks that they'll be only restricted to the ARF Troopers right now. But they also talked about having them being customizable. We can see that there's going to be multiple arm options for these guys, multiple head options, and that's also in keeping with some of the Shatterpoint stuff about having different head options for generic Jedi that game is also getting. So I love the fact that they're going with generic Jedi. It's a very exciting thing. Now, they also went on to talk about the reprints. They're doing all of the soft plastic miniatures for Star Wars Legion again in hard plastic. We've already seen Stormtroopers, Darth Vader, a lot of the very initial, the early stuff, a lot of the Rebellion and Empire that are only in soft plastic right now. Those are all getting redone. They won't be out this year, but we're looking at 2025 for a lot of this stuff. These are being redone. They also showed us a new Obi-Wan Kenobi sculpt. If you look on the base there, you can see he's on like tactical rocks, and he's got like a droid head and all of this other stuff. And I can understand, the need to put, some more stuff on there. If somebody's running, they don't have 2 feet on the ground, and it makes the miniature less stable. So you kind of want to have a little bit of stuff on there, even though I'm not a fan of having stuff on the bases. Most of the time, I can see it with this particular pose. But what strikes me as odd is they also showed us that Grievous is getting a redo as well. And this is something that I'm not crazy about because we already have Grievous in hard plastic. It didn't seem like there was much of a reason to redo Grievous when he's already great. Will Schick had said that, and our Grievous wasn't really up to snuff, and you can't do Obi-Wan without Grievous. And I would argue absolutely you can do Obi-Wan without Grievous. There's no reason at all to redo Grievous. You don't have to do Obi-Wan without Grievous at all, which has led some people out there to suggest that maybe they're working towards a second edition of Legion. And I didn't initially think that, but after hearing some talk about it, I think that there is a possibility that they'll do something like that. If they're investing as much into Legion with redoing every single thing in a hard plastic, I could definitely see them doing a new edition, kind of as another incentive to get the new stuff, maybe new unit cards. I could see a new card pack, and I don't have any problem with new editions of games. We talked for a little bit after the stream was over, well, towards the end of the stream on Sunday. We talked about Warhammer. Just announced Age of Sigmar 4th edition, and Warhammer 40K is on 10th edition right now. I don't have a problem with games getting new editions. There's good ways to support it, and there's bad ways to support it. And I think Asmodee learned a lot with X-Wing 2nd edition on some mistakes that were made. But I don't have a problem with keeping a game refreshed and keeping a game up to speed with new editions. I do have concerns about AMG doing it, though. I'm worried that they'll simplify it too much. I did not like the way that they changed the rules with climb and getting rid of clamber, and the way they basically made every unit have the same ability to climb almost. I didn't like some of the changes that they made already. So hopefully they're able to make terrain. To me, it diminished terrain a little bit, and so it makes me worry a little bit if they do go to a second edition. Will they make it a little bit too simple? Will they make it more like Shatterpoint? And it's a concern. It's just a worry that I have because AMG sometimes seems to favor very simplistic rule sets, so that they can just focus on miniatures and not on gameplay. Now, I don't think that's the direction they may go for Legion because they do have at least one developer who really seems to understand the game. Andrew Dursum has been very well spoken when talking about Legion. I feel like he really gets it. I feel like he really understands the game, and a lot of the stuff that they've previewed for us seems really interesting to me. There's not too many things that are coming out that I look at and say, well, that's dumb. So maybe they're going to do really, really well with Legion. So I'm definitely going to keep an open mind moving forward. We are going to be getting some more news later this year. A mini extravaganza is supposed to be coming out in July, where hopefully we'll get a little bit more information. We did not see Gungans spoiled yet, but they were talked about not too long ago as something that would theoretically fit very, very well into Legion. So it wasn't a complete, it wasn't a rebuke. and so that's a good thing. It was probably more like they're coming, they're just not ready to be teased just yet. I was hoping that they would be teased in time for May the 4th. Phantom Menace is coming back into movie theaters this year, and I just thought it would be perfect, but we didn't get Gungans just yet. But we got a lot of really cool Legion news. There's definitely some groovy stuff coming just around the corner. So in the next couple of months, we're going to see some new units finally hitting store shelves, especially for those clone commandos. We didn't see everything. We didn't see Delta Squad. We didn't see the Rebel version of the Bad Batch. There's definitely more spoilers and things that we can learn about that are going to be coming. There's a lot we didn't see. So I'm anxious to see more previews as they come out. We will bring them to you. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely out of this world and help make this whole channel possible. Thank you so much for your continued support. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. So say we all. The spice must flow. And always wash your socks.